Oh, and we are live. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. Welcome for being here. You could be anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here with us today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us on National Voter Registration Day for our Mujeres to the Polls Jolt Talk. My name is Giselle Colón.
Hi, my name is Bella Llano. I'm from El Paso, Texas, and I'm an Arriba Las Mujeres Fellow.
Hi everyone, my name is Miriam. I'm a Arriba Las Mujeres Fellow from Dallas, Texas, and I go to Baylor University.
Hi all, my name is Maria Rocha, and I am a Arriba Las Mujeres Fellow from Austin.
And tonight we are so excited and very humbled to be sitting here having a conversation with Representative Jasmine Crockett, and a little bit about Representative Crockett. I mean, amid political turmoil and economic distress and racial inequality, civil rights attorney Jasmine Crockett laced up her shoes to march for justice and ran for the Texas House of Representatives. Her passion for empowering people politically and in social justice led to her career as a public defender, county party chair, civil rights, and criminal defense attorney. And now she's taking that fight and fire to the Texas House of Representatives. Representative-elect Jasmine Crockett is preparing to hit the ground running in the upcoming legislative session and continuing to defend our most vulnerable neighbors. And as I said, we are so excited to welcome Representative Crockett here with us. Yes, so welcome, Representative Crockett. So glad you could join us today.
Thank you so much, you guys. I'm so sorry that I'm like in the car and I'm masked up, but I will be out of the car shortly for sure. I am so excited. I love everything about Jolt, and I cannot wait until I have the opportunity to vote for so many of you. You women are head and shoulders above where I was when I was your age. And so you guys give me so much hope for the future, and anything that I can ever do to support you, I'm definitely going to be here to do that. So I'm excited to get into this legislative session. I'm excited that you actually care and you're trying to make sure that other people care and know the importance of the role of a state legislator, especially in times like this when we're in the midst of a pandemic and we can't seem to get laws that make sense so that we can be safe, as well as have the economic support that we need. Or at a time when we're experiencing racial uprisings and it seems as if we don't have authentic voices that are writing these laws to make sure that everyone is protected, regardless of where they come from or what color they are. So it's very important work that you do. I don't want you to ever be discouraged. I know it will always present some sort of obstacles because that's just life. But you ladies inspire me every single day. So I'm excited to get started in the conversation.
Yes. And I mean, thank you again. And you said it so well, you know, even amongst the pandemic, so like having us here from all corners of the state and having a Zoom as representative as it is and inclusive just really speaks volumes to how Texas is really rising up to end 2020 on such an incredible note. And so I think with that, we can jump into our conversation. And so, you know, just to kind of get the ball rolling, what makes you the most excited about being a state rep, and what are you hoping to bring into Austin this session? Especially, I think this session is going to be watched more heavily, and there's definitely a lot more at stake. And I think the energy is definitely different. And so, with this being your freshman session, you know, what are you doing maybe to prepare? How are you seeing yourself going into it?
You gave me like a 10-part question. But that's okay. I think I caught the majority of the parts.
Okay.
So what am I most excited? You know, what's so weird is I don't know how many of you know, this job does not really pay any money.
Yeah. So
I think at your age, it may feel like a lot of money, but it's not. So we get $7,200 a year, right? And I have never been so excited not to make money. But you know, the old adage goes that if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And so for the first time in my life, I really feel really overwhelmed, but from a very positive standpoint. I am excited because I really feel like it's a new day for leadership. Thank you so much. I feel like it's a new day in the state of Texas. You know, one of the things that has been most frustrating for me as a Texan is never really feeling like there was someone with a voice, or a voice that represented my interests, right? There's always voices for big companies. There's always voices for law enforcement. But like, where's the voice for the everyday person? We see those voices sometimes come out of DC. We'll see an AOC. We'll see an Auntie Maxine. We'll see the squad overall, right? And we hear them and we know that they're fighting for kind of the everyday person. But when it comes to Texas, I'm like, who is fighting for the everyday person? Who's going to go in there and say, listen, you know, for instance, I've already been approached about a bill that I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to agree to that. And it was a bill as related to a gas tax, right? So it was like, oh, we've not increased the gas tax in 20 years. And I said, okay, oil companies are fine. And yeah, I know we're going to have a deficit, right? But the reality is that if I put a gas tax that is going to make gas go up 2 to 3 cents a gallon, who is that going to hurt? Probably the people that are already struggling in the midst of this pandemic, right? Because there's a certain level of privilege that exists in the fact that you can work from home. There are people that don't realize that that's a privilege, right? But not everybody can work from home. You have plenty of people that have to catch the bus or even get in their cars, right? So let me tell you something. If we increase the price of gas, that's going to be passed on to those that are riding the buses. If we increase the cost of gas, it's only going to hurt that everyday person that say is going to the grocery store to make sure that we've got our groceries, or they're going to the Popeyes chicken or wherever you like to eat. And so, you know, having somebody that can say, you know what, 2 to 3 cents per gallon, it really may make a difference, especially depending on how often somebody has to commute. Like I'm not doing it, right? So the other thing that I feel like has been missing for so long that I'm really excited about is just a lack of connectivity to everyone. You know, for so long, people want to write off young people. And like I said, you guys inspire me. I think you guys are beyond amazing. I was nothing like you, nothing like you when I was your age. And so this idea that we would write off our future and not engage them and not try to make sure that they've got a voice at the table is problematic for me. And so I'm just excited that it's just going to be a new way of leading. And the fact that I was unbought and unbossed means that I get to do this my way. Like, I don't owe anyone anything other than the people, because the people got me here. So those are the things that I'm excited about. As far as this session being a challenge, it's going to be beyond a challenge because, you know, we've got a budget shortfall. We had a budget shortfall before we hit a pandemic, right? So it's the same issue that we're going to see everywhere. So one of the big deals that I've got to figure out is, how can I help the budget without hurting the people? Which is tough, right? It's like, you know, we normally get the money from the people. So it's like, what do you do? So, you know, part of the conversation we just had was that it's going to be a big session on gaming, which I am pro gaming, especially right now. I can't say that I was ever just moved by gaming, but the reality is that people are not traveling as much. They are wanting to do something because we're dealing with COVID. So they're going to Oklahoma, they're going to New Mexico, they're going to Louisiana, and they're taking their Texas dollars there and spending it at casinos. We need every dollar we can get. And so I am for gaming, because that is one way of ensuring that we will increase revenue to the state without producing any harm to the everyday working person. because these people are already spending their money at these gaming locations in different places. In addition, we may be able to attract some of those that live outside of Texas to come to Texas and spend their money here. So gaming is one of the things that I plan to push for as it relates to a revenue stream, as well as marijuana. I don't know that I really should be talking to y'all about marijuana. Probably shouldn't be talking to y'all about gaming either. But but the reality is that I am pushing for decriminalization. Not because that's kind of what people do when they go to college, but more so because we are spending too much money on incarcerating people over marijuana. And we need to make sure that we're being smart about the money that we spend. In addition to, I do want to fully legalize it. Most people don't realize that we legalized marijuana back in 2017 for medicinal purposes. They expanded upon those usages last session. It's still not as robust as we need. We only have 3 dispensaries in the state of Texas. So they're bringing in some money, but not enough to make a big enough effect. And, so I want to be pretty aggressive on it to bring in money. We need so much more money for our schools. We've needed money for our schools for a long time. The problem is everybody's like, oh, we need to pay teachers better. We need to pay them better. We need to pay them better. Oh, we don't know where we're going to get the money from, but we need to pay them, right? Like, I think we can all agree that teachers need to be paid better, especially in light of COVID. I've talked to my fair share of teachers that have actually contracted the disease and then ended up infecting family members. So, they don't have hazard pay. They don't have, it's just a lot. So, so I've got a ton that's going to be on my desk to deal with for sure. But obviously the immediacy and the emergency nature of the pandemic is going to be number one.
Wonderful. And I think that for you to also quote Shirley Chisholm saying that you were unbossed is very fitting, because how you said representation, a direct consequence is just bridging a better system that works for the people. And so I definitely love how, in new representation comes a lot of these changes and perspectives that should have happened a long time ago, but at least we're getting to them now. And so that kind of guides into this bigger idea of representation, because in the last few years, especially in 2019, we saw a lot of women of color specifically take that initiative and run for office. And representation, as you may know, is so important for young women to see themselves as leaders in their field. And so, but that usually, I believe, stems from a unique point in an individual's life. And so did you have any individuals who inspired or mentored you along your journey to not only become an attorney, but now a state representative?
So my journey to becoming an attorney is not necessarily normal. So I never wanted to be a lawyer. That was never part of the plan. And even when I ended up going to law school, it was like I had this attitude of, well, if I don't like it, I'll just quit. Because I had a full ride with a stipend. So I was like, well, I can go for a year, and if I don't like it, I'll quit, right? But it was actually someone at school. It was one of my professors who really pushed me to go to law school. By the time I was making that decision, I had pretty much decided that I was going to be a CPA. And he was like, "You've got way too much personality to be an accountant." And I was like, "Sir, I am very good at numbers." And he was just like, like that's not you. Like, just see. So, he recruited me for mock trial. I became an All-American the 1 year that I did mock trial, and National All-American. And then he said, just apply to law school. So I applied. So then when I got a full ride in the stipend, I was like, well, I'll go. Right. So it was never really this thing where I really, really, really wanted to go. But there was a turning point that did make me, I guess, look at it a little bit more seriously. And that was when I was the victim of myself, along with a number of my friends. We were the victims of a series of hate crimes on campus. Our cars were keyed with derogatory words. We received mail in our on-campus mailboxes, which is not like your on-campus mailbox number is ever listed anywhere publicly.
Right.
So it was a very like, I don't know, I felt very hurt and lost and confused because my school did not have that many Black people at it, but I never really felt like I was in a racist environment. I felt like, you know, my friends were my friends. Like, my friends were my friends. So for the first time, I questioned, was it you? Who are you? Like, it's changed the trajectory of a lot of things personally for me, because I never questioned the authenticity of anyone. Whereas at that point, the only people that I trusted was anybody that wasn't white. And it was a different time. But at that time, my school brought in the Cochran firm to try to help investigate. And the attorney that was assigned to me was a female that graduated from University of Houston School of Law. And so it was almost like all the stars were kind of aligning. And so I said, all right. And ultimately I did graduate from University of Houston Law School. But she did become my shero, because that was a time where I just didn't know who to talk to, what to do, and that kind of stuff. And so, so I would say that she definitely played a role. But overall, kind of the circumstances of what was going on in my life really kind of started to change the trajectory of me going from CPA to attorney. And beyond that, you know, by the time I got to law school, I was kind of good at it. So I was like, listen, I'm just going to get some money, right? Like, that's what people do. They graduate, they tell you like, oh, you can make money. And I'm like, I wasn't even thinking about money. So I then became motivated by money. I quickly questioned, wait a minute, why did I become a lawyer? Do I really want to be a lawyer? I think I want to do something else. And I finally got to the point where I really questioned, like, why did you ever go to law school? Like, girl, what happens? Like, why did you do this? And when I truly questioned, it took me back to my roots. And I went back to that girl at Rhodes College that was upset, frustrated, confused, and did not know who to turn to. And I thought about all the people that have been in my shoes or are in my shoes, right? And so I said, I've got to go back to serving the people, and I can't worry about money. I can't worry about anything else, which is why I then end up obviously signing up for a job to pay $7,200. But, you know, God is consistently taking care of me. So if there's one thing that I would ever really, really want you guys to take away from anything that I've ever said is follow your heart, and do what truly feels like is your purpose work, and the rest will fall into place. I've never had to worry about anything so long as I truly was following my heart and truly felt like I was doing what was right. Everything else just fell into place. And so, you know, at times, especially when you're young and especially in this kind of economic environment, it's easy to say, you know, as you're coming out of college, you're like, I got to go make money. You know, the economy is terrible. You know, like, I've got to figure out how I'm going to make money. And I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but I'm saying that if making money in whatever capacity doesn't align with what you truly feel like is your purpose, I really would encourage you to search and seek out your purpose, because we all have a role to play on this earth. And if you seek out your purpose and you follow through with your purpose, I can almost guarantee you that you will be beyond successful in accomplishing whatever goals it is that you set out for yourself.
Absolutely. And so would you say that, you know, you had mentioned your shero, but if you could elaborate, you know, if she maybe was how you got into civic engagement, or was civic engagement a whole other journey of yours?
So I would say that it ended up being kind of two separate things.
Okay.
What happens ultimately is Lee Merritt, who is my fraternity brother, he and we'd met, but at the time I was going between Texarkana and Dallas. He was going between Pennsylvania and Texas. And his classmate from undergrad is Sean King. And
Wow.
so, you know, the officers were killed in Dallas. We had 5 officers killed. And so Lee and I had, you know, recently met within like the months or whatever, just said some Omega Delta type stuff. And he knew that I did lots of criminal and whatnot. And when they decided to arrest Mark Hughes for being a suspect as being the shooter, he got a call because Mark Hughes' brother called Sean King. Sean King reached out to Lee Merritt. Lee Merritt reached out to me and said, hey, Lee's not licensed in Texas. He's never done criminal in anybody's state. And he said, I don't know what's going to go on, but, you know, it was in the midst of kind of all the chaos and confusion. So we were called in. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if Mark had participated. Like, we knew nothing. And so I was called in, but that kind of propelled us to really this national stage. Lee more so than me, because I'm a trial lawyer. So Lee would kind of be on TV talking about different stuff. But I mean, we went to New York and interviewed at Diddy's like magazine. And I mean, we did all kinds of like different interviews and that kind of stuff. And it naturally flowed from there. We ended up with Jacqueline Craig in Fort Worth and so many other cases. And so it more so flowed organically, but it brought me back to I can provide what was provided for me. And so I, you know, once again, it's kind of that being purpose driven. I think everything kind of ultimately falls into place so long as you're consistently kind of leaning into what your purpose is.
Absolutely. No, and it's funny because before this, like all of us talking as current college students, I think a lot of us have a commonality in that 2016 was specifically so impactful for us. But even in our specific areas, just almost awakening to a lot of these issues, and really standing up and saying, well, if no one's going to do anything, here I am. And let's go for it. I mean, I don't know if any of the other girls would like to comment on that briefly.
Sure. I mean, I, for one, am really touched by what you just said about providing what was provided for you, like paying it forward, looking at how you can help your community because there were people who looked out for you. Just making sure that you are protecting, enabling, encouraging the next generation, because it can't stop with us. This is a movement that isn't going to stop, and we can't afford to have it stop with us.
Yeah. No, I you know, and I love to hear you say that, because I feel as if one of the things that, you know, if I could change one thing, which for the most part, I wouldn't change the majority of the struggle. There's always, you know, think about when you're actually doing a regular exercise, right? Like you build muscles when you're struggling, right? Like if it's easy, you're not building. And so I believe in the struggle, and I believe that it allows for you to appreciate things on a different level. But I will say that if I could change one thing, it would be that in my perfect world, I would have had a mentor, preferably a woman, who guided me through so that I had, number one, some sort of expectations. Like, you know, I was basically in the deep, you know? So having the expectations of like, this is what's coming, right? Even though I still may struggle, but like, give me a heads up. It allows you to better prepare. And just someone that could really facilitate an environment that would enable me to be my best version of me. And so that is the one thing that I consistently want to make sure that I provide for the next generation. I mean, I absolutely don't want anyone to have to go through things without me being able to make it easier for them, right? You know, one of the things about the March on Washington that was so interesting to me is that it was MLK's granddaughter or great grand, one of the two, not really sure which one. She's only 12 years old. And she asked her dad, she said, why are we doing this? Didn't granddad already do this? And I'm like, so you know, out of the mouths of babes, right? Because the reality is that, like, why are we starting from square one, right? That's not to suggest that no progress has been made, but for me, I don't want somebody to reinvent the wheel. I want there to be someone that's literally in the pipeline and they are ready to go. They are more prepared. Just like I said, you guys are way ahead of any place I ever was when I was your age. I want you to be. I want you to be better than me. Like, I want to know that, like, yeah, I made it to state rep at 39, but by 25, 26, y'all were there, right? Like, you were already ready. You were there. And you're making it to the White House before your Kamala's age, right? Because there is a pipeline that is going to facilitate and nurture and grow you in the areas that you truly feel like are your purpose. So that's the only thing that I would change, because, you know, I would love to be able to say, along this journey, there was a Shirley Chisholm, right? That was actually in my life that was saying, hey, like, I ran for president. This is where I messed up. This is what I would have done to change this. This is, like, who would have said, let me remove some of these roadblocks for you and make. If there's any legacy that I could ever leave, it's that I spent my time making sure that I was going to give back and make sure that those coming behind me were going to be better than me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so going into that, as far as not only having a seat at the table, but leaving room for others, what would you say coming out of your election and your run would be your top 3 pieces of advice to women of color who are contemplating running, but just for some reason haven't already or want to in the future and just don't, like you said, have that information or guidance right now, but they should be running?
So I would say, number 1, find somebody who will genuinely help you, like me. Politics is a crazy world, right? There's like all kinds of agendas and that kind of stuff. So when I say genuinely, like, finding somebody who, like, I'm not threatened. There were definitely people that thought certain doors that I went into, they were like, oh, they're threatened that you're going to take their seat. And, you know, the reality is that what God has for you, it is for you. And if I didn't tell you I was coming to take your seat, then take it as that. Like, I mean, you know, but it's this idea of, if I help them, they will be better. Like I said, I want you to be better than me, right? That doesn't mean that there's no value that I can bring to the table. And so I would say, number 1, seek out somebody who genuinely will help to kind of guide you through the process. You know, I spend so much time right now, even though I don't have an opponent in November, I spend my time on the phones, helping other candidates, giving them advice, giving them vendors. I mean, everything. I'm just like, hey, have you thought about this? Do this. I know you don't have that much money. Have you thought about trying to raise money this way? Like, that's all I do. I spent probably an hour and a half of my drive to Austin today on the phone with a candidate in East Texas, trying to give him little tips and tidbits and suggestions on things that he can do to win one of his local races that I really think he can win. He just didn't have anybody that could kind of, like, maybe give him some of this, like, advice. So number 1, I would say seek out somebody who genuinely will help you. Number 2, I truly believe that it's hard for you to say, I want to run for office without you really understanding what that means. You may want to serve, but you may not want to run. And so,
can you elaborate on that?
So what I would suggest is that you work on other campaigns.
Okay.
Because that gives you an idea of what it is to run.
Okay.
You know, like having the seat is one thing. Working to get the seat is a whole other can of worms. And some people just don't have the chops. They're like, I don't want to do it, right? Once you see the inside. So I would say, you know, I don't really kind of believe in paying dues in that way, but I believe that experience is the best teacher. And so by working on another campaign, you can definitely gain so much experience. You can meet so many people and get a better idea of, oh, if I did it, I would do it differently. Or if I didn't do it, then I wouldn't do it that way. You know what I mean? Like you can gain that perspective. And then I would say the last thing is study the position that you think you want. So many people run for office and they really don't understand. They don't understand what that job really entails. They may understand on the surface level, but it's easier for you to sell someone on your ability or your desire if you fully understand, right? So if all I understand is that my job is to write laws, it's harder for me to sell someone on why it should be me. Well, why you and not somebody else? You know, like, is there a better understanding that you have of certain laws or, you know, whatever? So I would say really study the position that you seek so that you can sell voters on why you're best equipped for that position.
I just want to thank you, Representative Crockett, for those wise words of wisdom and for being a candidate that doesn't just expect a vote from people, but makes a direct connection with the people and yourself. And you do that by telling your story and by listening to the stories of other people around you, but especially young voters such as ourselves. And so I want to kind of introduce the stories of mi por qué. So I want to talk about my story and how I got civically engaged. So that kind of all started in the 2018 election, midterm election, when I met Beto O'Rourke at a March for Our Lives rally in El Paso. And I thought two things: that one, that Texas politics was changing because there was a candidate that actually wanted to hear what I had to say and was going to work with me on certain issues that I was passionate about and a lot of people around me were passionate about as well. And number two, that a mass shooting would never happen in my beloved hometown. So flash forward to 2018 in the fall, I left for college. I went to a predominantly white institution, which is a real culture shock for me because I was coming from a predominantly Hispanic community in El Paso. So I would get in a lot of arguments and I would fight with a lot of my peers because just on different issues. But what really propelled me into politics was the El Paso shooting on August 3rd, 2019. And I realized that if on a larger level, if I wanted to make a change, that I had to be civically engaged. I had to, get people educated on a lot of things. But most importantly, I had to fight for minority groups such as myself, such as my community, to actually get something done. So I think it's so important to tell my story because I'm showing that the Latinx community is resilient, and I want to fight for other communities that are disrespected, just hurt, and are treated so poorly. So that's why I think sharing your story and sharing other stories, other people's stories, such as there's so many issues going around like in 2020 that have kind of been exposed, that were kind of like pushed under the rug. But I think now if we come together and we share our stories, we all are different. We all have different personalities, different ideas, and we just come from different places. But if we come together, we can work for a common goal. And if we work for a common goal, we can have a society that doesn't, just focus on one group of people and hurts another. And I think this is a reoccurring theme in what you've been saying, that you want to hear the people and you want to hear the issues that they're passionate about. So we make sure that as a community, we can get things done instead of having just one community on the top, but having each community included in the conversation so we can make a better society for tomorrow. So that is my porqué, and I think that's why my the stories that we each tell are so important, because that's just who we are. And to get things done, we need to share those stories and come together. So I would love to hear from Miriam, and I want everyone to hear her amazing story.
Yeah, so I am just so inspired by Bella and her commitment to her community. I think that that's the reason why Texas is such an incredible battleground this year. And in very similar ways, my introduction into civics and politics is pretty unconventional. So both of my parents are Ethiopian and Eritrean refugees who fled a civil war and corruption, and they found asylum in Athens, Greece, and were there for 10 years until they were able to come to Dallas, Texas, and start their humble American dream, and really sacrifice for, their aspirations for my siblings and I. And growing up, though politics was never a topic of discussion at the dinner table, I really grew up thinking it was all C-SPAN and just older people arguing. And so it was never on my radar. But I entered college as a first generation student in fall 2016, which was my freshman year at Baylor University. It's where things truly hit me. And I'm very transparent in saying that I didn't vote that year. But after seeing kind of the social aftermath on my campus, it really proved to me the consequences of my negligence. And so that day, I really realized that I had become comfortable with the assurance that other people would do the work that I needed them to do for my community. And I was complacent and trusting that the systems and elections would kind of work themselves out in our favor. And in all honesty, I was privileged in the idea of not caring. And so I changed, and I started in my community as an ESL teacher, and I became an immigration reform advocate. And kind of over the course of my journey, I've humbly worked in some incredible spaces with amazing people, like the campaigns of Beto O'Rourke, MJ Hager, and I was a legislative aide actually last session at the Texas Capitol for Representative Chris Turner. And currently, I'm a field organizer for the Sima Lajabardian congressional campaign in Houston. And so truly doing the work of my community and being a voice at the table es mi porqué, and because we really should never feel powerless or unqualified to make incredible change for our future. It's really through voting and organizing, I believe, that we have the power to change our country's narrative. And I believe that young, ambitious women of color can absolutely lead the way, but it's going to take all of us. And so I work and I fight so that we're not only taking seats at the table, but we're also seated at the head of the table. And so that's really my motivation, and I'd love to pass it on to Mari in Austin because she's doing incredible things at UT. So we have to hear from her.
I'm very humbled by that, Miriam. Thank you. And afterwards, I'll be sure to pass it on to Giselle, who's got a wonderful story. So I became more civically engaged in 2016 with the election of President Donald Trump. I attended a predominantly white high school, and I remember the next day at school after he had been elected, one teacher had her classroom vandalized. I was personally asked if I was ready to get deported afterwards, and I've been an American citizen all of my life, so it was hurtful to see hate just immediately directed and to see people's true colors. Then before I left for college, I was able to meet Beto O'Rourke at a rally in my hometown of San Antonio. And like Bella, I was very touched to see somebody who was actively trying to get youth involved instead of just dismissing the youth as a population that never shows up to the polls, which as we have been seeing in recent elections is not the case. And when I came to the University of Texas at Austin, I was really looking for a Latinx community. I didn't really have that in high school, and the one that I had was my family, but I was looking for more people my age to also engage with. And I found that in Jolt. I found people who were committed to Latinx civic engagement, Latinx education, Latinx excellence. And I'm so grateful for my Jolt community. I chose to get more civically engaged in the age of COVID-19 because I'm not a frontline worker. I am not a healthcare provider. I am not a teacher. This is something that I can do to help my community. My work with Jolt helps Latinx Texans learn about political engagement, from the census to DACA protection to voting rights. I am so proud of my identity as a Latina Texan, and I will keep working to make my culture proud.
Those are absolutely stunning words, Mari. I don't know how I'm supposed to top that. I really had a pleasure hearing everyone's story, including, of course, Representative Crockett. Thank you again for being here. Just a little bit about my porqué, my why, the reason why I'm civically engaged. I had the privilege, and I say privilege because other members of my family didn't have the same opportunity. I was actually born here in the States. I'm also a proud Latina. I have parents that were both born in Mexico, and given that privilege of being a citizen at birth, that of course comes with the ability to vote. And I chose to be civically engaged. I, like Miriam, would scroll through C-SPAN and be bored, and I would just see the legislative sessions, and I would just see all these old people, and that never piqued my interest until a candidate came around and introduced me to politics. Similarly, like Bella, that candidate was Bernie Sanders. I was introduced to him my senior year of high school, and I unfortunately was not able to vote for him because I was underage, but I did post on social media as my limited knowledge allowed me to do. I donated a few dollars here and there and felt super proud of myself, but I noticed that wasn't enough. I noticed that members of my community were still being alienated, discriminated, just like Maria's community. And I had family members that went through similar experiences, that they were called out for their citizenship, or maybe not even their own citizenship, because they were citizens here in the States, but their lack of citizenship. And that has always struck a chord with me, since I was granted that privilege to be an American citizen from birth. And so it's very important to me to raise my voice, since others are consistently silenced, and it's still happening to this day. And so that one little thing that I can do, using my voice, using it at the polls, encouraging others to be civically involved, leading the way. If I don't do it, who else will? And I can at least serve as a blueprint for those that are thinking about voting, or maybe just contemplating being a little bit more civically engaged, paying attention to who their elected officials might be. That's the reason why I'm doing this. And we would love to hear from you. I know you did touch a little on that, Representative Crockett, but if you could elaborate on that as well, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so definitely so much of my why is you guys. Like, I'm sitting here and I'm just beyond astounded, like, it's not my first time getting to hang out with y'all, and it's like every single time there's something better and greater that I learn about you that makes me want to keep pushing. It is frustrating to be a woman of color, to be a Black woman in Trump's America. Ain't gonna lie, like I have no way of sugarcoating that. And the reality is that I don't have any children. And you guys are probably the closest thing to coming close to children that I have. But I don't want people to feel the way that I feel, or to lack a level of opportunity when people have already fought and died for that, right? So when you say, oh, we had the women's suffrage march, and that was back 100 years ago, right? But we're still fighting for equal pay. We're still fighting for a seat at the head of the table, right? If we can get to the table. Like, the numbers in the state of Texas when it comes to our legislature, women are just now getting there, let alone women of color, right? And you know, I want us to have a say, because honestly, this country would not be what it is without our voices and without our participation and without the framework that we've laid. Not to mention, and this is completely left field and partisan, but you know, this idea that we have these male comprised legislatures that want to dictate to a woman what she's gonna do with her body. I'm like, what year am I in? Right? Like what is this? Right? Like, I thought, you know, especially when we think about the accomplishments of an RBG, I thought she made it so I can make my own decisions. Like, I thought she fought for those things, right? So I wouldn't have to have a husband to have permission to buy a home or anything like that. So, you know, to me, I always have felt compelled to leave this earth better than I found it. And so for me, I really it's just who I am. I want to make sure that I leave this world better than I found it. And the reality is that for so long, I haven't really felt like I've been getting what I needed out of quote unquote representation. It would be a lot easier for me to not have to run for office, right? Like it's a lot. It is taxing. You do not sleep. A lot of times you do not eat. You are not really making money because you're working on the campaign. I see my amen corner over there with Miriam. You understand, like, I mean, it takes so much out of you, and you put yourself and your family on the line to be ridiculed, to be lied about, to be taught. Like, it's such a sacrifice, right? But I think that it's a worth sacrifice, and it wasn't getting what I needed. And I just didn't really feel like I was getting what I needed. And if I was feeling that way, I could only imagine the number of people that also felt that way, right? I could imagine that I wasn't alone. And, you know, from the very beginning of this campaign, we did everything in the harder way, daggone it. You know, we went out and got signatures because it was important to me that I not put myself on the ballot, but that the people signed for me to be on the ballot. I needed the people to be involved from day one, from step one. And I do think that it makes a difference. And, you know, honestly, beyond what I want to do in my individual capacity as it relates to legislation that I will push for and pass, I want to establish a new bar for what leadership should look like. And the sad part is not really a new bar. Really, I'm trying to throw it back to a time where we actually believed that we would have actual representation, to where we believed in politicians. Right now, so many of us are disconnected because we say all they're going to do is lie. They're just going to say whatever they want to say to get the vote. And so people just don't believe anymore. So I really want to make people believe, not because of what I say, but because of what I do. And I want that to become the new bar for what we should all expect of politicians on every level.
Thank you, Rebelette Crockett. Those are such beautiful words, and you inspire us. I mean, you do so much for not only your district of Texas District 100, but you're going to do so much for Texans everywhere. And we cannot wait to support you every step of the way. With that, we will be ready to close. Today is National Voter Registration Day. Please make sure that you are registered to vote, your family's registered to vote, your friends are, your neighbors, everyone that you can talk to is registered to vote. We will be plugging Jolt's own Get Out the Vote link in our chat. If you have questions about Jolt, or if you are interested in joining us, please feel free to attend our virtual volunteer hours. We often have text banking events. Please, we would love to have you be part of this community. Does anybody have any closing thoughts, closing words, anything? Oh, and the last day to register to vote is October 5th. So you must be registered to vote by October 5th. Please be checking your voter registration status. If you are not registered by the 5th, there is nothing we can do to ensure that your vote will be counted in this election, one where it is needed more than ever. So with that, any closing thoughts?
I just want to really quickly thank everyone for being here. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please do not get to register to vote. Please be the Oprah of voting. Tell all your friends you get to vote, you get to vote, you get to vote. And we can't wait to see you guys at the polls. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, if I could add one last thing. There was something so amazing, and I think it was Giselle that said it. I think you were talking about Bernie. You talked about how upset you were that you couldn't vote, but that didn't stop you from participating. Sadly enough, there are people that are disenfranchised, especially in the state of Texas, for various reasons. One of them may be that people have something on their record, and they're still going through probation, or they're still going through parole, and so they're unable to participate, or they may not be a U.S. citizen, so they're unable to participate in the voting process. But that doesn't mean that you can't participate. And so I do encourage you to find a candidate that motivates you, because us low-level candidates, us down-ballot candidates, we don't have the money that a Joe Biden has. We have very minimal resources. And so it's important that we have volunteers. Even if you can't vote for somebody, you can send a text message, you can make a phone call, you can make a donation, no matter where you live. You can tell somebody, you can get on social media. Right now, what people need to understand is that this is a team sport. Nobody can do this by themselves. And if we all come together and we work together, we will make this country a much better place than it is. This idea about making America great is BS, in short, right? We've been a great country. The reality is that we need to become greater. And so we don't want to go back in time. We want to go forward. And we can't do that if we don't all work together. So don't ever think that your vote doesn't count. Don't ever think that there's nothing that you can do. Because if there's anybody that is the poster child for every single vote counting, it's this girl right here. I won my election by 90 votes. Every single vote counts. Do not rely on somebody else to do your work. We've got to work together. So I'm just begging and pleading with you, even if you can't vote, do something to help somebody else or encourage somebody that can vote.
Thank you so much for your time. Ladies, thank you for being here tonight. Again, we said at the beginning, you could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but you came to be here with us. I'm so grateful for Representative Crockett for spending time with us tonight. I'm grateful to everybody at Jolt for starting the Arriba Las Mujeres Fellowship. Without it, I wouldn't have met you three wonderful, my fellows, as it were. So thank y'all so much. And I hope that you have a wonderful evening.